My name is Chloe Bennett, and when I was 13, my parents proved exactly how little they thought my life was worth. One night, they spun a laptop around on our kitchen table, eyes shining as they showed me a booking confirmation for their dream vacation. 2 full weeks in France, Paris, and Bordeaux, and cute little coastal towns with names I couldn't pronounce. "We finally did it," my mom said, like she'd just beaten some impossible level. My dad was already talking about wine tastings and river cruises when I cut in with the only question that actually mattered to me. "What about me?" He didn't even pause. "You're 13, he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You're old enough to stay home alone." Then he pulled a single $10 bill out of his wallet, set it on the counter like a tip, and added, "This should cover you if you want pizza or something." $10. 2 weeks. An entire house in the suburbs just outside Seattle. And their plan was that I'd figure it out while they wandered around Europe posting pictures of croissants. I remember staring at that bill, doing the math in my head and realizing there was no way it was about money. It was about priority, and I was coming in dead last. They left before sunrise a few days later. Suitcase wheels rattling, Uber doors slamming, texted me selfies from the airport with champagne flutes and hashtags about living their best life. For the first couple of days, I tried to play along with their fantasy that this was some kind of cool independence test. I binged movies, ate whatever was left in the freezer, pretended the emptiness of the house felt like freedom. But as the food disappeared and that $10 bill turned into an empty pizza box, the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling like punishment. 2 weeks later, when they finally walked back through the front door, took one look around and started screaming, "No, no, this can't be happening." They had no idea I'd used those 14 days to give them a lesson they would never be able to expense away. If you want to know how a crumpled $10 bill turned into the most expensive mistake my parents ever made, listen until the end. From the street, our life looked like a tech company commercial. We lived in a sharp, glassy house just outside Seattle with big windows, perfectly trimmed hedges, and a Tesla in the driveway that changed every couple of years like it was on a subscription plan. My mom, Dana, was a senior marketing manager for a startup downtown. The kind of place that bragged about unlimited PTO and stocked the fridge with sparkling water flavors I couldn't keep track of. My dad, Eric, was a regional sales director for a cloud software company, always chasing the next bonus trip or President's Club plaque. They collected airline miles, not memories with me. My best friend, Lily Park, thought my life was straight out of a show. She would scroll through my mom's Instagram, stop on pictures of craft cocktails and conference badges, and say, "Your parents are always doing something cool. Mine just grill in the backyard." She didn't see the nights I microwaved my own dinner because no one came home before 9. By the time I was 10, my mom had taught me how to use 3 different delivery apps and called it raising an independent woman. When I was 11, I knew which frozen dinners cooked fastest so I could eat before it got too late. At 12, I stopped asking who was going to be home and started asking which nights I needed to remember to set the alarm myself. Every time I hinted that being alone so much felt wrong, they turned it into a compliment. "You're so resourceful, Chloe," my mom would say, typing with one hand while slipping on heels with the other. "You're way more mature than most kids your age." My dad loved telling coworkers that I could hold down the fort and that they never needed a babysitter. That might sound flattering until you realize mature is just the word some parents use when they've decided you don't get to be a kid. At school, the cracks were obvious to anyone paying enough attention. I nodded off in Mr. Carter's English class more than once because I'd stayed up late waiting to hear a car in the driveway, then given up around midnight and triple-checked the locks myself. He started asking if everything was okay at home, if I was getting enough sleep, if I needed to talk. I smiled the way my parents had taught me and lied. "I'm fine. Just too much homework." He didn't buy it, But he also knew my parents' resumes and LinkedIn profiles, and probably assumed they knew what they were doing. Neighbors saw the patio furniture deliveries and the takeout bags piling up in our trash and figured we were just another busy, successful family. Even I tried to believe it. I told myself this was what independence looked like now, that being on my own so much meant I was strong, not forgotten. And then my parents booked that trip to France, dropped $10 on the counter, and made it impossible to pretend their version of independence was anything but neglect, dressed up in nice clothes. The night they announced the trip, we sat around the dining table like a real family for the first time in weeks, which should have been my first red flag. My dad had his laptop open, practically vibrating as he scrolled through an email full of flight details and hotel confirmations. "Look at this," he said, spinning the screen toward me. "Seattle to Paris, then down to Bordeaux. 2 whole weeks. No meetings, no Slack, just us and France." My mom was already talking about cafe terraces and wine tastings and how she was finally going to unplug. For a moment, I got swept up in their excitement. The idea of wandering around Paris sounded incredible. Then the obvious question hit me like a cold wave. "Okay," I said. "So, where am I staying?" I expected them to say, "Lily's house," or mention flying my grandparents in, or at least bring up some kind of plan. My dad didn't even blink. "Here," he said. "At home." I stared at him. "By myself?" He shrugged like I'd asked if we were having chicken or pasta for dinner. "You're 13, Chloe. You don't need a babysitter. It's just, what, 12 nights? 13? You'll be fine." My mom chimed in without looking up from her phone. "We'll FaceTime. We'll text. We'll leave food in the freezer. You're responsible. You can handle it." Responsible. Handle it. The same words they always used when they wanted to feel good about stepping back. Then my dad reached into his wallet, pulled out a single $10 bill, and set it down on the kitchen counter between us. "And if you want pizza or something, this should cover it," he said. $10 for 14 days. I looked from the bill to their faces, waiting for someone to laugh, to say, "Relax, we're kidding," and pull out a stack of cash, or mention a neighbor checking in. Nobody did. I tried one last angle. "I could stay with Lily," I suggested. "Her parents wouldn't mind." My mom finally looked up. "We're not dumping you on another family just because we finally get a break," she said. "You have a house, Wi-Fi, food, and money for extras. You're more than capable." A few mornings later, they were gone before the sun came up, suitcase wheels rattling down the hallway, car doors closing softly in the driveway. They sent me a photo from the airport with matching grins and the caption, "Next stop, Paris," followed by a shot on the plane, clinking plastic champagne flutes. At first, I tried to treat it like the independence test they clearly thought it was. I stayed up late watching superhero movies, ate the better frozen dinners, wandered through the house barefoot just because I could. By day 2, the freezer looked a lot less generous. By day 3, the good stuff was gone, and I was down to a half-empty bag of fries, a can of black beans, and some cereal with no milk. That $10 bill turned into a single pizza delivery on a night when my hunger beat my pride. The delivery guy handed me the box and left without knowing he had just walked off with my entire safety net. On day 4, Lily texted asking if I wanted to go to the mall and grab lunch. I stared at my phone for a long time before typing out a lie about being grounded for talking back. The truth was simpler and uglier. I couldn't afford a smoothie. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, chewing dry toast because the butter was gone, and scrolled through my parents' latest posts from France. Them under the Eiffel Tower, holding glasses of red wine, my mom's caption, "Worth every penny." My stomach growled loud enough to echo in the empty room. In that moment, something inside me snapped into place. I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I started getting angry. And that anger is what pushed me to do something they never imagined their mature, independent daughter would dare to do. By day 5, the anger felt heavier than the hunger. My stomach still growled, but it was the insult that burned. $10, 14 days. Every time I opened the fridge and saw nothing but a sad jar of pickles and a half-empty bottle of ketchup, I heard my dad's voice in my head. "You're 13. You can handle it." That afternoon, I went into their bedroom, not even sure what I was looking for at first. Maybe I just wanted to stand in the space they'd carefully curated for themselves, the one that was always off limits when they were home. The room smelled like my mom's perfume and my dad's cologne, expensive and pointless. I opened their closet and just stood there for a second, staring. Rows of tailored suits, neatly pressed blouses, shoes lined up like a display in a high-end store. Shelves of handbags, some still in dust bags. Boxes stacked with old phones, headphones, random gadgets from conferences that had never even been opened. It hit me all at once how ridiculous it was. They had thousands of dollars hanging in front of me and had decided their only child was worth a crumpled 10. I picked up a pair of sneakers my dad used to brag about. Limited edition something, the kind he could flip for triple if he wanted. I turned them over in my hands and heard my mom in my head. "You're resourceful, Chloe. You'll figure it out." Fine, I thought. Watch me. I went back to my room, grabbed my phone, and opened one of the resale apps she'd once used to get rid of old furniture. I took a few pictures of the sneakers on the hardwood floor, typed out a simple description, and hit list. My heart pounded like I'd just committed a felony, even though technically everything in that house was supposed to be for us. Within an hour, I had 3 messages. By that evening, a guy in his 20s was handing me cash on the front porch while his friend waited in the car. "You sure about the price?" he asked, like he couldn't believe his luck. "Yup," I said, forcing my voice not to shake. "They've just been sitting in a closet." He walked away, thrilled. I walked back inside holding $50 and feeling a weird mix of guilt and satisfaction. I didn't buy junk with it. I rode my bike to the grocery store and filled a basket with real food. Bread, eggs, fruit, pasta, sauce, a couple of frozen pizzas that could stretch across multiple meals if I was careful. Standing in the checkout line, I realized this was the first time I'd ever done a real grocery run for myself. The cashier didn't know this wasn't a normal thing for a 13-year-old, that the money in my hand had once been part of my dad's collection. All she saw was a kid buying groceries. That night, I actually ate a proper dinner. Toast with eggs, some fruit, a small bowl of pasta. It felt like a feast compared to dry cereal and burnt burritos. I took a picture of my plate, not to post, but to remember that I had done this for myself. After I ate, I texted Lily and told her she could come over for a movie night if she wanted. She showed up with a bag of candy and zero clue that the snacks in our bowls were funded by her friend's quiet act of revenge. We watched a superhero movie in the living room, laughed too loud, and for a couple of hours, the house didn't feel quite so empty. But even as we joked around, my eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led back to my parents' room. The closet was still full. The gadgets were still stacked. The handbags were still lined up like museum pieces. I'd sold 1 pair of shoes and turned it into a week's worth of food. For the first time, it dawned on me that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was balancing the scales. And if they thought $10 was enough to get them off the hook, they were about to find out how expensive it could get when their mature, independent daughter decided to really handle it. By the next weekend, the $50 from my dad's sneakers was long gone, but the idea it gave me wasn't. I kept thinking about how easy it had been, how one thing he barely touched had fed me for days, and even paid for snacks with Lily. Every time I walked past their bedroom door, I could feel the weight of that closet pulling at me. On Saturday morning, I finally gave in. I went back in with a purpose this time, flipped on the light, and took inventory like I was running a small store. There were more sneakers, some still in boxes. My mom's handbag sat on the shelf, some with tags. One in a dust bag she only brought out when she wanted to impress someone. There were old tablets, noise-canceling headphones from conferences, even an extra smartwatch my dad had upgraded from months ago and tossed aside. They had built themselves a shrine to, "We deserve this," and left me to count pickles. I didn't go straight for the most expensive things. I started with what they were least likely to notice right away: an older pair of limited edition shoes, the extra smartwatch, one of my mom's backup bags she kept saying she would donate someday. I took clear photos, cropped them, and listed each item on the app and in a local buy and sell group Lily had added me to. I kept the description simple: lightly used, great condition, priced to move. My phone started buzzing like crazy. By the end of the day, I had people stopping by in a steady stream, parking along our quiet cul-de-sac. A smartwatch went to a college kid who couldn't believe the deal. A pair of sneakers went to a dad buying a gift for his son. That handbag my mom never wore? A woman hugged it to her chest and said she'd been saving for one for months. None of them knew they were buying pieces of a vacation I hadn't been invited on. I counted the money that night on my bed, bills spread out like a deck of cards. Between everything I'd sold so far, I was sitting on a little over $300. For the first time in my life, I had more cash in my room than my parents had ever left me at once. I didn't blow it on junk. I went back to the grocery store, this time with a list: fresh fruit, real vegetables, pasta, sauce, chicken, snacks that weren't just sugar and salt. I even grabbed some sodas and chips because I had another idea forming. If my parents could disappear to France for fun, then I could turn our perfect empty house into more than just a place I waited for them in. I texted Lily and a few other friends from school and said I was hosting a low-key hangout, movies and games, nothing crazy. "My parents are out of town," I wrote, which was true. "We've got space." Word spread faster than I expected. A couple of extra people asked if they could bring a friend. By the time the sun started to dip behind the trees that Sunday, there were half a dozen pairs of shoes by the front door, and the sound of laughter echoing off the walls that were usually silent. We ordered pizza, made nachos, played video games in the living room, and took stupid pictures in the kitchen. Someone snapped a photo of me holding a slice of pizza and captioned it, "When your parents go to France and accidentally make your house the spot." They posted it to their story, tagged me, and that was that. It wasn't some massive wild party, but for our neighborhood, it was a lot. Cars lined the curb. Music drifted out into the yard. Next door, Mrs. Green peeked over from her porch, curious, and gave me a little wave. Across the street, Mr. Jenkins pulled his curtains back and frowned like the very idea of teenagers existing was a personal attack. Around 9, he called across the lawn that it was getting loud and hinted about knowing the non-emergency police number by heart. I apologized and turned the volume down, and for the moment, he retreated. Inside, nobody had any idea how carefully I was doing the math in my head, how many people I could let in, how late we could go, how much I could sell without it being obvious. What started as me trying not to starve was slowly turning into something else, a way to make sure my parents felt the impact of their choices, even if they didn't see it coming yet. They had left me in charge of the house with $10 and zero plan. I was in charge now, just not in the way they imagined. The last days before my parents came back followed the same pattern. I sold a few more things from their closet, kept the fridge full, and let a small rotation of friends hang out at the house. It never felt wild to me, but to Mr. Jenkins across the street, 3 evenings of teen noise was enough for him to call the non-emergency line, and a bored cop showed up one night, gave me a noise warning, and taped it to our front door. I knew my parents would see that even if they missed everything else. I thought I had until the next morning to prepare, but their flight got in early. I was wiping down the kitchen counters when the garage door hummed and suitcase wheels scraped over the entryway tile. My mom stepped in first, suitcase in hand, smile already forming. Then she froze. My dad came in behind her, pushing another suitcase, and stopped too. The house wasn't trashed, but it wasn't staged like the showroom they'd left. The rug was a little crooked. A lamp had a different shade. There were faint rings on the coffee table and, most importantly, there were gaps. The missing speakers. The empty spot where my mom's favorite display bag had been. The chairs I'd sold. My dad dropped his suitcase and rushed down the hall to their bedroom, my mom right behind him. I followed and watched them fling open the closet doors. Half his precious sneakers were gone, boxes missing. Her shelves had obvious holes, dust outlines where handbags used to sit. No, 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 this can't be happening, my mom gasped. Chloe, what did you do? My dad shouted. I leaned on the doorframe. I ate, I said. You left me with $10 for 2 weeks. I sold some things so I wouldn't starve. You stole from us, my mom snapped. Do you know how much this all cost? I let out a short laugh. Yeah, I do now. Funny how there was apparently no money for me, but thousands of dollars just hanging in this closet. My dad's face flushed. We trusted you. We thought you were responsible. No, I said. You thought responsible meant I'd suffer quietly and say thank you. Before they could answer, someone knocked on the front door. I opened it to find Mrs. Green standing on the porch, eyes flicking from the suitcases to the warning notice still taped to the glass. You're back, she said, voice flat. My parents appeared behind me, trying to pull themselves together. I've been a little worried about Chloe, she added. It's been a lot over here. Across the street, Mr. Jenkins grabbed his mail and called out, Maybe next time you'll remember old enough to stay home alone doesn't mean invisible. My dad's jaw clenched. We're calling the police, he muttered. You can't just sell our things and throw parties. This is theft. I met his eyes. Go ahead. Tell them how your 13-year-old had to sell your designer toys to buy groceries while you were drinking wine in Paris. Show them the noise warning on the door and explain which part of this looks like responsible parenting. For once, neither of them had a comeback. The hallway went quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like the moment right before glass breaks. And in that silence, I realized something had finally shifted. For the first time in my life, they were more afraid of what their choices said about them than they were of me stepping out of line. They didn't call the police that day. I could see the moment the math shifted in their heads, the way their anger crashed into the realization that any official report would come with questions they did not want to answer. Instead, they did what they always did when something threatened their image. They tried to handle it quietly. The next week was a blur of damage control. My dad had a meeting with HR after someone from the neighborhood parent group sent around a screenshot of one of those party stories. It had my house in the background and the caption about, when your parents go to France and your place becomes the spot. HR didn't care about teen slang, but they did care that one of their managers had left a 13-year-old home alone for 2 weeks. My dad came home from that meeting with his face tight and said almost nothing, but I heard enough to know he'd lost his shot at the promotion he'd been chasing all year. They want me to take a family responsibility workshop, he muttered, like the words tasted bad. My mom spent days on her laptop, not for work, but trying to track down the people who'd bought her things. She managed to buy back a couple of pieces, but only by paying more than I'd sold them for. The rest were gone for good. Between the fines from the noise complaint that finally came in the mail, the inflated buyback prices, and the fact that they'd already blown thousands on the trip itself, money suddenly got a lot tighter. The Tesla in the driveway quietly disappeared a month later, replaced by a used SUV with no bells and whistles. Just until things even out, my mom said, but the look in her eyes said she knew exactly what had evened them out. One night, after another tense dinner where nobody talked about anything real, I told them I wanted to make a deal. We sat at the same kitchen table where they'd once proudly slid a $10 bill across the counter. This time, I was the one talking and they were the ones staring. "You're worried about what people will think if they find out everything," I said. "About the parties, the stuff I sold, the fact that you left me here alone. I'm not stupid. I know you're trying to put this back in the box." My dad started to protest, but I held up a hand. "I'm not saying I want to ruin your lives," I said, "but I'm done pretending this was just a misunderstanding." I told them what I wanted. A real college fund in my name with actual money in it, not just promises. Regular therapy as a family, not a one-time apology followed by business as usual. And no more disappearing for days and weeks at a time without someone responsible in the picture. "You don't get to call me mature and independent when it's convenient," I said. "If you want the world to see you as good parents, you have to actually be them." For once, they didn't try to flip it back on me. Maybe it was the HR meeting. Maybe it was the car they'd had to sell. Maybe it was the way Mrs. Green had started saying hello to me first and them second. Whatever it was, they agreed. Reluctantly, awkwardly, but they did. Over the next couple of years, they followed through more than I expected. Money went into an account with my name on it. We sat on a worn-out couch in a therapist's office and said things we should have said years earlier. They still messed up because people don't magically become decent overnight. But they showed up more. They came to school events, asked real questions, and sometimes actually listened to the answers. I'd love to tell you everything turned into a perfect Hallmark movie after that, but it didn't. Even now, at 25, there's a distance between us that no amount of wine country photos or therapy sessions will completely erase. I went to college, moved out, built a life that didn't revolve around waiting for suitcases to roll down a hallway. We talk, we visit, but I never forgot the feeling of standing in that kitchen with an empty stomach and a $10 bill on the counter. If there's any lesson in this, it's not sell your parents' stuff and throw parties. It's that kids shouldn't have to set themselves on fire just to make the people who made them finally feel the heat. Independence is something you grow into with support, not something that gets dumped on you so your parents can take prettier vacations. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like an afterthought in your own family, I hope you at least hear this. Your needs are not a burden, and being mature should never mean being invisible. And if you're a parent who somehow made it to the end of this story, ask yourself a simple question. Are you raising a child? Or are you just raising someone who will have a story like mine to tell about you one day? Our team at Revenge Argon is dedicated to creating powerful, meaningful storylines that blend emotion, drama, and education into one experience. All of our stories are fictional and are designed to share valuable knowledge and life lessons, helping viewers reflect, grow, and make better choices in real life. In this story, the villains are the parents who choose selfish pleasure over basic responsibility, treating their own child like an afterthought and calling it independence. Their neglect and arrogance are what make the revenge feel so justified and satisfying to watch. If you were in Chloe's place, how would you handle parents like this? Would you forgive them, expose them, or walk away for good?